So The Fall Guy is directed by David Leitch, and it's just over 2 hours long. It stars some of my favorite actors in Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, and this is one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I know that might sound crazy, but after I saw that first trailer, I was hooked and I couldn't wait to see the movie. It just looked like so much fun, and I am pleased to tell you it was. I saw it last night, I had a great time, I was smiling throughout the movie. It's one of my personal favorite David Leitch films at this current moment. The movie is all about a stuntman played by Ryan Gosling. His name is Colt Seavers. He gets an injury and then disappears for basically a year. He used to have a bit of a relationship with Jodie, played by Emily Blunt, who is a camera operator, and then a year later she is a director for a new film, and Ryan Gosling's character enters the picture to be the stuntman for that movie. Then the main actor of this film disappears, and Ryan Gosling's Colt Seavers is tasked with finding him. That's basically the story in a nutshell, but let's go ahead and dive into pros and then cons, and then I'll give you guys my rating out of 10 at the end. So starting off with pros, I gotta say the chemistry between Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt is amazing. You really buy into their relationship and the chemistry between them right away. They just play off of each other really well, and you really believe their relationship. I enjoyed every moment they were on the screen together, the banter that they had, the romance, everything was just really well done between the two. Next, we gotta talk about the story. I thought it was very simple but effective. It was a little bit predictable though, but I still really enjoyed it. Next, we gotta talk about the side characters because they didn't really have a lot of story to them, but I did enjoy watching them. Characters like Aaron Taylor Johnson as Tom Ryder, Hannah Waddingham as Gail Meyer, Winston Duke as Dan Tucker, a stunt coordinator. Those are kind of like the big three in terms of side characters, and I really enjoyed all of them. Like I said, I do wish they had a little bit more story to them, but I did enjoy watching them throughout the movie. Then we obviously gotta talk about the action because this is a stuntman movie. It is a love letter to filmmaking in general. Like, we see all the behind the scenes and how the stunt work happens and how different members of the cast and crew are treated behind the scenes, which is really cool, you know? Like, I love filmmaking. I want to end up going to film school after university. I think that would be awesome because I love movies. I love seeing how they're made, and eventually I want to make my own or maybe be a part of making someone else's movie. I know this is a little off topic, but I'm really hoping that Marvel Studios could cast me as Wolverine. That is like the ultimate goal. I know the MCU Wolverine is like 5-6 years away roughly, but I think I would be perfect for the role, so maybe someone at Marvel Studios sees my account one day and gives me a chance, who knows. But anyways, I do love films and filmmaking, and just seeing the behind the scenes of how a movie is made is just really interesting to me, so I really like that aspect of The Fall Guy. It's really a movie within a movie, which was really interesting. Like, we're literally watching a movie as a movie is getting made, so we get to see how the crew interacts with each other and how things are shot, and I just really like that. And since this is a movie about a stuntman that has to go on this journey to rescue the lead actor of this movie, we get some really great action in this film, and David Leitch was actually a stuntman at the beginning of his career, so he definitely knows stunts, and it shows in this movie. And there's a lot of it. We've got like street chases, hand-to-hand combat, we've got vehicle stuff like boats, fighting with weapons, we've got all these different things that are happening which are all different elements of stunts. The action overall was just really well done, which I came to expect with a movie called The Fall Guy. That's all about a stunt performer. Like, can you imagine if the action and stunt work in this movie wasn't good? That would be just absolutely ridiculous, so I'm glad to say that the action was top tier in this movie. And one other thing I want to point out is in the movie, they literally talk about giving awards to stunt performers, like Oscars, and there's not actually a category for that, which is just ridiculous in my opinion. So hopefully with this movie, maybe that can get the conversation going to give an Oscar for stunt performers, because they deserve it. Like, some of the stuff they do is just absolutely unreal. They're putting their life on the line a lot of times too. So I don't know how there's not an award for that, but I really hope that within the next year or a few years that they actually have awards for that, especially at something like the Oscars. Then we gotta talk about comedy, because I think maybe 80% of it landed for me. Like, throughout pretty much the whole movie, I was just smirking in my chair, giggling, because I thought a lot of what they did was actually really hilarious. There was some moments that weren't as funny as they were intended to be, but for the most part, like I said, about 80% of it was making me laugh. A lot of it comes from Ryan Gosling just talking to Emily Blunt. Like, they have just such great chemistry. Their comedic timing is really great, and just the way that they bounce off each other is just a joy to watch. Then we gotta talk about the soundtrack, because it is great. Like, really good. And it just fits so well with a lot of the scenes where the music was playing. It was so great, and after the movie I actually went and listened to the Fall Guy soundtrack. That's how much I enjoyed it. So those are the pros that I had. Now let's move on to some of the cons. My first con is that the third act kind of dragged a bit. We hit a point where some, major stuff happens and I'm like, oh, like this is the ending, but then I remembered, I was like, oh, in the trailer there's this shot and it hasn't happened yet, so the story has to continue, and it did, and it just felt a little bit dragged on because it felt like we were at the climax of the movie and then it just kept going for another climax. It was basically like this big action set piece, and then I was like, okay, the movie's ending, and then we got another one, which was fine. It was just I was expecting the movie to be done, and this movie's only just slightly over 2 hours long, so the fact that I felt that it dragged a little bit tells me that the third act was a little bit messy. It wasn't bad by any means, but it wasn't as tight as it could have been. My next con is the fact that some of the suspense was removed in this movie, because there's a scene where it looks like someone is dead, but then it's revealed that they're alive like right away, and it really removes the suspense. Like, you didn't need to have the scene of this person alive. You could have had everyone believe that they were dead and then they just show up and it's this big moment, but for whatever reason David Leitch was like, no, I want them to know this character is alive right away, which kind of took away some of the stakes and suspense in the third act. Another negative I had was some of it was a little bit messy, like setting up the story. We don't really know why the main actor is missing and who's after him and all that. It does get revealed obviously later on, but at the beginning of that it was kind of hard to follow. It was all entertaining because Ryan Gosling, he's doing all this fun stuff, he's being really charismatic, we've got good music playing, some cool action, but we don't really know what's going on, so it was a little bit confusing. And then my last con is I would say that we needed a little bit more of Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's the main actor in this movie within the movie, and he's not really in it until about the third act. Like, he shows up very briefly at the beginning and then he's basically just gone for the whole thing. He just pops up on like posters and commercials and that's about it, and then we actually get him in the third act, but I think we needed a little bit more of him throughout the movie. I can't really explain anything beyond that because it would lead into spoilers, but yeah, that's essentially all the negatives I had with the movie. It was really just like the third act. It was really enjoyable, I just think it could have been tightened up a bit. So guys, with that being said, those are my pros and cons. Now let's go ahead and rate it out of 10. I am going to give David Leitch's The Fall Guy a 7.5 out of 10. Originally I thought I was going to give it an 8, but then I sat down and went through all the pros and cons and I was like, I'm not too comfortable with giving it an 8, so I'm going to give it a 7.5. It is a really good movie, it is a ton of fun, I definitely recommend to watch it in theaters. It's got really good ratings right now, and I would say it's one of my favorite David Leitch films to date. I would say it's probably my second or third favorite. If I had to rank my top 3, I would probably say number 1 is Deadpool 2, number 2 is probably Bullet Train, and then The Fall Guy probably lands around number 3. That could obviously change. I think with a second watch, The Fall Guy might go up to number 2 and replace Bullet Train, but I won't know until I watch it again. But overall, I really like this movie. Like, I left the theater very satisfied, I was smiling, I was like, wow, that was a great time at the movies. So yeah, definitely go check this movie out in theaters. Leave a comment down below of what you guys thought about it if you have seen it already. Other than that, I want to thank you for watching my review. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.